attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the Architectural Board Review agenda for May 3rd of 2021. We'll start with a roll call, please.
Thank you. This is Mary. I'll go ahead and take the roll call. I'll start with Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Six.
Here.
Board Member Anderson. Here. Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And Board Member Whalen.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And with that, we will move on to public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not on today's agenda. And you can follow the instructions on screen to let us know if you'd like to make comment.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do not see that any member of the public has raised their hand indicating they'd like to speak on a general item.
Okay.
We have not received any written correspondence for today's, any general written correspondence for today's agenda.
Okay. Well, then we will close public comment and go on to approval of the minutes for the 19th.
So moved.
Okay, we have a first.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olson. Any discussion?
Yeah, it's Mr. Chair Moore, the last item. Very minor. Under the motion last, that at the very end of the motion is so that the project cannot be seen from all public views. Distinctly remember and emphasizing all. That means from across the street and through the grounds and so forth.
Okay. Mr. Olson, is that all right with you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
No, then let's take our roll call vote, please.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Yes.
And Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
I would like to thank
Great.
Board Member Six for such careful considerations of these. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and now approval of the consent calendar for the 26th.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, first by Mr. Olson, second by Mr. Black. Any discussion? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
All right, thank you. I'll start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Block.
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Yes.
And Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And now any announcements, future agenda items, appeals, etc.
I do. I have an announcement. Christina has been in contact with me regarding my question about Funk Zone murals. She has provided me with information and I am going to ask for a bit more, but I just wanted to announce that She has been very carefully attending my questions, and we're probably going to have answers.
Okay, thank you. Anything from staff? Any announcements, etc.?
Thank you, Chair Moore. No announcements at this time.
Okay, any subcommittee reports this time?
Chair Moore, the Highway 101 working group is out, is not meeting for a couple weeks because of that they're taking their effort out to shareholders meetings and so forth, such as the zoo and neighborhoods and so forth. So it's going well, but we're on a inactive period right now.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, let's move on from general business to our first item, which is item number 1, rooftop mechanical equipment screening discussion item. This is a follow-up discussion regarding the rooftop equipment on 251 South Oak Avenue. This was last discussed at the November 2nd, 2020 meeting. I'll let the staff jump in there.
Thank you so much, Chair Moore and board members. As you may recall, back in November, it was brought in the fall, it was brought up about the rooftop mechanical equipment as a general discussion item, and then this specific address was addressed, was brought up as an area of concern. At that time, the case planner, Kathy Kennedy, reviewed the plans and made a site visit and determined that the project was built to the plans. However, we know that architects have more of a discerning eye, and Vice Chair Six offered to actually help us review this project to make sure that it was built per plans, just because this was an area of concern. Kathy Kennedy, the project planner for this case, is available if you have any questions for this. I was wondering if Vice Chair Six would be able to speak to his investigations on this project.
Sure, I'm not sure. I would be glad to. I'm not sure what order your photos and diagrams that I submitted, but I thought of the idea of taking photographs with sight lines, and you see this is the first photograph you saw was the blue. No, it was the first photograph you saw was the red line where I stood back far enough. Let's see, wait a minute. Let's see, actual sightline cutoff. Yeah, the blue line was where I stood for the first photograph, to where I could just see the top of the screens from over the eave of the tile. So that is the actual as-built angle of the sight line. The red obviously is, the line determined by the drawings, showing that cutoff from what they were proposing would be the cutoff from eave to top of screen. And you can see by my diagram that it's 20 feet further out, which is not a significant amount. So you have another slide.
Vice Chair Six, we only have these two items, the photograph and your sightline study.
So, and I took others and tried you know, I put a plan where the red line would be and the blue line for view. And there was not much difference. The red line is still, it's at the property line, not at the midpoint of the parking lot. So it's, you know, it's a little different, but it's, you know, it doesn't amount to a hill of beans and not worth, it's not significant. I think the lesson we learn from this, because it is shocking and you know, the as-built from any significant distance away is very unfortunate. I think that the lesson to take away from this, well, first of all, you can see by the diagram that the screen was clearly not well disguised, and more importantly, that screening needs to be, you know, of a material very sympathetic and common with the style of the architecture. Here we have this semi-gloss vertical metal louvered siding that just stands shockingly in contrast, and obviously a mechanical addition to an otherwise Spanish stucco tile wood architecture. So I think the lesson, and I don't know whether we have in our guidelines a verbiage to that extent, but we sure need to watch ourselves to make sure that that screening, when screening the equipment, is very much part of the materials and the style of the architecture. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Six. So just so I had a question came to mind when I was looking at the photo. It certainly appears that the equipment screening is taller than likely depicted in the diagrams.
Yeah.
Was that your feeling?
Yeah, and I had an alternate plan which, you know, showed the location if indeed the if indeed the top of the screen was out at the blue line, something went awry, and I have no idea, but it's, you know, so yeah, I can't explain why that difference is, but it's, you know, a 20-foot difference and still, you know, exposing itself, you know, totally within the site. I don't think we can, you know, have grounds to make this a violation.
Okay, thank you. Does staff or anyone else have anything to add this time? I mean, great points brought up by Vice Chair Six that we really need to be conscious of vantage points when we're taking this into consideration. So, all right. If no one has anything else to add, we can move on to item number 2. Oh, did we have to have, we should have had public comment, shouldn't we have?
I think it's like
Okay.
our mind.
We will open, we'll open public comment for this item. Is there anybody out there that would like to make a comment regarding this item?
Thank you, Chair Moore and members of the board. Members of the public, if you are here for to have a public comment on the discussion item, please raise your hand so that I'll be able to call on you. I don't see that anybody has raised their hand on this item. Mary, have you received any written public correspondence for the discussion item?
Thank you, Christina, and board members. We have not received any written correspondence for this item. Thank you.
Okay, then we can close public comment and we will close discussion on this item and move on to item number 2. How are we doing on time? Well, so we had, this was up for 3:30. So can we get started on this?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do see that the applicant has logged into the webinar. So, and there's a 15-minute threshold. I do believe we can start this item.
Okay, then we will move on to item number 2, which is 920 Summit Road, which is here for project design and final approval. This is a proposal to permit an as-built family recreational site improvements to the event lawn of Montecito Country Club. The project includes permitting a children's sliding hill, 3 athletic hard courts, a sand volleyball court, turf soccer field, batting cage, an unroofed trellis, 1,300 linear feet of dry stack boulder retaining walls, and related directional signage, hardscape, landscape, and grading. Project must be found by the Community Development Director to be in substantial conformance with the original project approved under the planning application, and feedback from the Planning Commission on the requested changes is required. Slide number 2, please. And project design approval and final approval is requested. Project requires consistency with the project compatibility analysis criteria, and this was last reviewed March 22nd of this year. Okay, looks like we have some staff comments to lead us off. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair Moore. Yes, I'll provide a few staff comments before the applicant presentation. So to recap from the last meeting that the board reviewed this project, this involves a request to permit as-built recreational site improvements to the event lawn of the Montecito Country Club. The ABR did review and approve a reduced version of recreational improvements to the event lawn back in 2018. However, this as-built plan does include additional amenities. Since the last ABR meeting, the applicant has incorporated accessibility improvements to the project based on comments from this commission, which will be discussed as part of the applicant's presentation today. And as noted in the project description and that you read into the record, the project does include a request for a substantial conformance determination. Following ABR's review today, the project will go to Planning Commission for a discussion of the SCD. And those comments will then be forwarded to the Community Development Director for a formal determination. The project is eligible for project design approval and final approval at this hearing. However, any approval granted by the ABR will be contingent upon the granting of the SCD. And I'll be available for any questions throughout the hearing.
Okay, thank you. So the motion reads that the applicant shall update the plans to incorporate accessibility, and number 2, the existing as-built aesthetics are generally acceptable with the caveat of the impact of accessibility issues. I did go back and watch the video, so I will be participating in this item. Okay, we have our applicants here, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And please note the 15-minute clock, if you could keep your presentation to that timeline, that'll help us keep on track. If you could introduce yourselves and take us through your changes since the last time we saw this.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is Steve Welton from SEPS. We're the agent for the Montecito Club. I'm joined by Sam Nafis, the landscape architect, and Tennessee McBroom, who's from the operations from the club. Pilar teed us up pretty well. We appreciate that. Last time you reviewed it, you asked us to consider the accessibility and how that might affect the design. And so we have come back with revised plans that do show how the project is able to access the various components of the project. So with that, I'll turn it to Sam to let him walk you through what we've done.
So as you know, board members, we are looking at the event lawn, which is a big turf area up behind the club and, west of the parking lots, the upper parking lots. So we previously had approved a golf driving range up there and play courts, just like we have and are showing you now. And last time we reviewed all the play courts. The structure that was built is a shade structure for a little bit of a respite up in the hot. No trees are on this site, so this is one area that we thought that could be in a shade structure, which is behind one of the pickleball courts. We have 2 pickleball courts, a basketball court, and a sand volleyball court that are all flush to the turf that surrounds it. We also have on the west side a sliding hill that was discussed. We have now, if you want to go to the next slide, I think it blows up this area and allows us to go into detail. We go the next way, we have a blow up out of the lens. But this would be good. This is the engineering that shows how the ADA and accessibility works from the parking lot. On the right side of the plant, east side, we have a parking lot dedication for an ADA handicapped spot, and the exit allows the person to get onto a ramp that winds its way up at a slope of less than 5%, 5%, I should say, so we really don't need a railing, and that attaches to a walkway all along the west side of the pickleball court that connects over to the more centered one on the south side of the play courts. It's all along the 4 different activities there, and allows the accessibility to the center of each of the courts. So both courts are now being accessed correctly for the ADA and the ADA requirements. We also can go between the western pickleball court and the basketball court with another pink walkway, accessible walkway back to a seating area underneath the trellis. That trellis is all accessible for all aspects of wheelchair and handicap access, as well as going to the north side of the sand volleyball court, entering at that point, and then over to the sliding hill. And then thank you for blowing that up. And as you see, the accessibility along the south side allows you to get past the volleyball court and into what is the big soccer and turf area and the event lawn that's further to the west towards the edge. So that is kind of what we were tasked to provide and to make sure we were successful at achieving. And this shows the engineering of just how minimal the slopes are and how easy it is accessible. We do have a landscape kind of illustrative plan. If we could go to that, I'll show you. We are using brick in the same pattern that we have used throughout the entrance and other pedestrian connections and links throughout the clubhouse. I think we might have one more plan that, there you go. If we blow that up, you'll see it's a herringbone pattern with a soldier course border that matches the entry and much of the other fine quality pavement patterns of the club. But this allows access to the batting cage, the seating area, all the play courts, the sliding hill, and the larger open play yard to the west. The existing stairs are now attached to this walkway that is connecting throughout. All of the materials were chosen to be as quiet, and the basketball court has a sound absorbed material that again reduces sound. I can let Tennessee address some of the qualities of the materials that were purchased and bought for this area, just to be conscious of sound and the neighbors and trying to make sure we were doing the right thing for the neighborhood.
Thank you. So on the batting cage, what we've done is we've used the balanced composite two-piece bats. It gives more of a natural sound than than if we would have used just a regular aluminum bat or a wood bat. And then the balls for the batting cage on softball and baseball are the high-tech, the A-Tech dimple balls, which are quiet. It's not a regular baseball. So it also gives a little noise reduction. On the pickleball courts, to mitigate some of the noise, we did research and we chose a Green Zone approved paddle that has an internal honeycomb. So it's listed as one of the green approved noise reduction paddles to keep that noise down as well for the pickleball courts.
And then just historically speaking, this property has been used as a variety of things, an event lawn for decades. Originally tennis courts were located up here. The club hosts weddings, 4th of July events. And previously, as mentioned by Pilar in her introduction, the design board and the city approved an athletic court and golf hitting bays in this location. So I think that wraps up our presentation. You heard all of this before, so don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, we're here for questions. If there's any concern or clarifications. Thank you. Do we lose the board?
Okay, thank you. Trying to get my webcam going again. There we go. All right, so if that is everything, we need to open public comment. And if the applicants could turn off their webcams and mute themselves. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make a comment regarding this project? You can follow the instructions on screen.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do see two members of the public. Oh, apologize. I thought
Go ahead.
We do have two members of the public that have raised their hand. Sullivan Israel and Richard Lloyd. I will call on you on that order. Mr. Israel, I have unmuted you, and you'll need to unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes to speak on this item. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So hello, board. My name is Sullivan Israel. I'd just like to know I'm taking time out of a college class to make these comments. I sent in a written comment earlier, but I just wanted to reiterate what I said, as well as what my neighbor, Mr. Mazzillo, said. The country club for years has been doing unpermitted work. Recently, they've repaved the street, added a curb, and perhaps most importantly, put in a new electric car arm on Summit Road. These changes were not in the plans that you just viewed. Those plans are not accurate. Those plans are not up to date. There is a small guardhouse that is now in full operation and is not included on the plans that you just saw. And so this is something that the country club has been doing for years now, where they build things and then hope that you permit them after they build them. That's what happened with the gate at the top of the street, which as far as I can understand is still unpermitted and is still illegal, in which they still lock at night, even though they're not allowed to. I actually came to you guys back in 2017 and complained about this with a bunch of my neighbors. I don't know if any of you remember that. But I just wanted to point out that the plans, again, I want to reiterate, they're not accurate, and that these things that they're building near homes are already there, and now they're just hoping to be permitted. So thank you for hearing me today.
Mr. Lloyd, I'm going
Thank you
to
for your comments.
Mr. Lloyd, I'll
Go ahead.
unmute you, and you'll need to unmute yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, Richard Lloyd from Capello and Noel on behalf of Mr. Angelo Mazzillo. He's the owner of 109 Rometto Road. His property appears in the background of the plans and is less than 100 feet from this unpermitted and unapproved sports complex. Since the facilities have opened, he's been hugely impacted by these. In the short weeks, he's been prevented from enjoying his backyard and pool area, and has even been forced inside by the noise and disturbance. As the summer approaches, these disturbances are only going to worsen. Because of this sports complex, the quiet and restrained atmosphere of his property has been shattered and the value of his home substantially affected. We saw brief reference in the applicant's presentation to noise mitigation. Frankly, it's not working. And when viewed in context, this is nothing more than a calculated plan to expand the member facilities at the expense of neighboring properties. This area was originally part of the golf course. As part of the 2008 renovation that aligned the tennis courts horizontally, this was turned into an event lawn that, as applicant notes, has been used only intermittently for member events. The use that the ABR is being asked to approve has a grossly expanded impact on the neighboring properties, and no more so than my clients. And let's not forget, this is a huge property. It's over 100 acres. There is enough room for a bowling alley. It has the largest private club pool complex in California. It has 4 tennis courts. It has an 18-hole golf course. The club could have put this sports complex anywhere on the property, but instead chose to put it in direct view and less than 100 feet from a neighbor. And this positioning is no accident or oversight. Tens of millions of dollars spent on this renovation, countless professionals. And if the club knew this was above board, why would they lie to my client's face and tell him they were just replanting the lawn? And even now, the club is openly advertising the facilities to members despite lacking the permits and approval. Do not reward the club's conduct by rubber stamping this as-built project. The board should deny the project and send the club back to the drawing board. These facilities must be removed or at minimum relocated where it will not disturb the enjoyment of my client and destroy his property value. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
Chair Moore, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what to do in this case. Mr. Israel, who already spoke, has raised his hand again. Oh, they've lowered their hand. Okay. Mary, have we received any? I don't see anybody who's raised their hand again. Have we received any written public correspondence?
Thank you, Christina. We did receive written correspondence from Barry Capello on behalf of Angelo Mazzillo, and it was distributed to the board before this hearing. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will close public comment and go on to questions from the board. Who would like to start? Any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to confirm with staff that noise is not of our purview, and that we're aesthetic board, and that an issue that a neighbor may have on non-physical aesthetic issues would have to be pursued through the appeal process.
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Six. To clarify, yes, this is an aesthetic board. As I noted at the beginning of the presentation, this project will be going to Planning Commission for a discussion item on the substantial conformance determination request. This project, as it's noted in the description, does need that separate determination to be granted in order for these improvements to be officially approved. Some of those SCDs will have to be consistent with the coastal development permit that was originally granted for the Montecito Country Club, a development plan that was originally granted for the country club, and a conditional use permit that was originally granted for the country club, and that's under the purview of the Planning Commission and eventually the Community Development Director for the SCD request. So your purview today is to discuss the aesthetics of what is being proposed and general consistency with the project compatibility criteria.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Just one small question for the applicant. You know, as we travel up the ramp, the slight ramp, and turn toward the pickleball court, why do we have, you know, in interest of maximizing landscape, why do we have that little finger going north or up sheet?
I can answer that, Chairman or Board Member 6. There is a small access as you get behind the hedge that you could squeeze by. So that just kind of keeps consistency and a little bit of aesthetic balance across the entire pickleball court instead of shortening it. So we took it to the end because you can get to the back part of the batting cage and you can kind of go between the hedge and the batting cage to access areas. So it just allows a little staging and it's a little bit of aesthetic balance across the entire pickleball court. It's not meant to get someone to the back that needs the accessible walkway. It just kind of finishes that look with a little bit of symmetry.
Okay, no big deal. And just a general question, was there an increase in the area of the synthetic turf from this plan from previous?
I do not think so. I think there's a reduction because there's synthetic turf between the pickleball court and the basketball court, which is being removed. But the interface between real turf and synthetic turf is shown by a zigzag line, a different color green. That is all consistent with what's there now.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, correct. It's a slight reduction.
Thank you. That's my question.
Okay. Mr. Black, you had a question?
I do, thank you. So just for clarification for myself, so we're being asked to evaluate this project. This is an as-built condition. So in other words, all these improvements have already been built and we're being asked to approve them. Is that correct?
Is that directed towards us, David?
Yeah. Sure, yes.
Yeah, as we explained in the last meeting, and Tennessee is here too, if you want to hear from him as to how this transpired. But as Pilar pointed out, in 2018, portion of this design was approved of the basketball court, athletic court, and then a golf hitting bay, and some additional hardscape that is reflected here was also approved at that time. However, this is an expansion upon that, and so it is in existence currently. And so this is an as-built condition.
So would I understand then that the only thing that's not as-built is the proposed ADA walkway? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. That's not there currently.
So do we have photographs of all this as-built? Did you show those the last time? I'm trying to remember.
We
I know
did.
that there was a few shown.
Yeah, we did have photographs.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like if you go through this, you'll actually get into the improvements.
Do you have photographs of the site, pictures taken from the neighbors by chance?
No, but you'll be able to see a little bit as we go there. I think that's the right there.
That's the neighbor, and you can actually see, excuse me, Steve, you can see just how tucked up against the slope and how it pushes most of the facilities up against the retaining wall that's hidden by a very tall 6 to 8 foot high acacia rhododendrons hedge, if you will. So that screening exists now. And I think that there's nothing vertically that is in the view corridor. And in fact, looking down at the view corridor towards the courts, you would really just see the south sides of most of these court pieces because of the way they're tucked up against the slope.
One more question. So looking at this photograph, I believe on your site plan, you show what's described as a vinyl chain link fence around the pickleball courts. Do I see them here? And how high are they, if so? I don't see a fence here.
I think the desire is to keep the pickleball inside the court with a very small black vinyl chain link fence. And I think The hedge height at this point is about net high, which at the most is 3 feet or slightly less than that, 32 inches. But the intent is that the hedge buries the fence and it's only about 3 feet high, David.
I see. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from board members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms.
just,
Anderson.
oh, sorry.
Can we just look at the landscape plan again? And then if maybe Mr. Mathis can walk us through the planting at the retaining walls? Are those the new retaining walls over to the left? Or are
The
those?
retaining wall is shown as kind of a brownish color behind the seating area and the batting cage. So those little cobble.
Okay, so the ones that are curved over to the west, are those existing and not part of this project?
Those are also part of the project.
Okay,
Those-
can you walk us through the landscape around those walls?
We expand out and go to those terraces. Yes. So the landscape is consistent with the landscape throughout the club improvement. It's a mixture of bougainvillea, low rosemary to cascade over the walls, also salvia leucantha, agave attenuata. There's swaths and masses of same kinds of plants that are on the west side of the tennis court that was previously approved with the golf course renovation.
Okay.
So this is star jasmine, rosemary, bougainvillea, salvia, some acacia, rhododendrons, and some taller acacias for screening on the west side from some of the neighbors looking towards this facility. So if you expand out to the south, that landscape of those terraces will cover and blend with the rest of the landscaping that goes towards the #1 hole on the fairway. So it's very much in continuity with everything that's already been previously installed and approved with the golf course.
The first couple of photos also show that if you wanted to see what's out there.
And those walls are all sandstone,
Mhm.
kind of a dry stack look. If you look at those photographs,
Okay.
that matches
That was
the
the question.
tree wells and the other landscape walls that are already there.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Vice Chair Six, you had a follow-up?
I was trying to look, is the 3-foot high limitation of the height of the pickleball fences noted on either the landscape or the architectural plans?
You know, I see a label on the right pickleball court says black vinyl chain link. We'd easily be able to put 3 feet. I'm not sure that we have that on there as a dimension, but the intent is to keep it very low.
Is it on the architectural?
Not there.
Is it on the architectural plans? It doesn't need to, we can address it in our motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, may I just respond also to the public comment?
Well, these aren't comments, these are questions. So
I agree, but there was a public comment earlier. I was referring to that. Excuse me.
Very briefly.
Yeah. I just wanted, there was a comment regarding an unpermitted golf guard shack, and that was included in the scope previously in 2018. That was approved. And you did review it, as this board did review it, and we did pursue and obtain building permit for that. So I just wanted to clarify the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I recall that as well. Are there any other questions before we go to comments? No? Okay. Let's move to comments and work to create a motion, please. Who would like to start?
Apologies, Chair Moore, before you enter into your comments and eventual motion, I just wanted to remind the commission, if you are to do a motion for any approval at this hearing, I would just ask that you include the project compatibility analysis criteria in any motion and specify why it is or isn't meeting that criteria. Thank you.
Okay, a question for you, Ms. Pilar, as well. Does the project require project design approval or positive comments to go to the next review step?
Thank you, Chair Moore. The project, as I mentioned, is eligible to receive project design and final approval at this hearing. That doesn't mean it has to be granted. The project will be going to Planning Commission for discussion of the SCD. So how it's laid out right now is if you were to grant an approval at this hearing, that approval is contingent upon the SCD being granted. So if the SCD is not granted, then any approval would be invalid.
I understand that, but is there a requirement from this board, either in a motion form or in a project design approval motion before it can go to the Planning Commission?
No, if you were asking if it can, just receive comments, yes, it can just receive comments at this hearing if that was the discretion of the board. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have comments?
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Chair Moore. Thank you, Chair Moore, for ferreting that out. I think that the most efficient thing for us to do is delay a project approval, especially that I'm not quite certain, but I think the compatibility analysis addresses compatibility, and noise could be a factor in that. So I would say that we articulate a motion to send it on to Planning Commission without final approval. But that saying that the physical aesthetics of the plan are acceptable. So I would be, if anybody else has additions or exceptions to that, I would be prepared to make a motion to that effect.
I would support that motion, Mr. Six.
Okay, so anybody else have exception to that?
Chair Moore, and then Vice Chair Six. I would just ask if you do want to make a motion for, in this case, an indefinite continuance to Planning Commission for their discussion item of the SCD, if you could include the project compatibility criteria still and say what parts of it are consistent with that criteria in your motion.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Plummer. So I would make a motion for indefinite continuance to the Planning Commission for its review with the following items: that as far as the physical aesthetics of the project, they're fine, and being mostly landscape and flat work, that the physical, that is acceptable. Number two, that for record purposes, that either the architectural plans or landscaping plans note the height limitations of the pickleball surrounds, and as well as the batting cage surround. And that three, that the project preliminarily meets the project compatibility criteria as follows. Number one, as far as not hearing anything from staff in this regard, the board assumes that it's consistent with complies with the city charter and the municipal code requirements. And the project is just, design is consistent with the guidelines applicable to the location of the project. Number two, compatible with architecture character and city of the character of city and neighborhood. The project appears to be compatible with the characteristics of Santa Barbara and the particular neighborhood. With the caveat, back up, please. Can we get? Thank you. With the that it's understanding that noise is not part of that compatibility criteria. Number three, that it is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, and scale, because it is mostly landscape and flat work. Number four, it is sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources, given its given that it's mainly landscape and flat work. Number five, no public views of the ocean or mountains are affected. And number six, there is appropriate use of open space and landscaping, given that the project is all about that. That would be the end. That would be my motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Mr. Black. Any more discussion?
Thank you,
ahead,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair, and to Vice Chair Six, just for one clarification. In your indefinite continuance, following Planning Commission and Community Development Director review of the SCD, do you want this project to return to the full commission for project design approval and final approval, or to consent?
Oh, good point. If it's okay with the rest of the board, unless it is significantly changed from the planning commission review, that I think it can go to consent. So my last motion is that the last item is that the project can return, if not significantly altered by planning commission review, can return to the consent agenda for final approval and final PDA.
Okay.
I agree.
Is that acceptable to you, Mr. Black? Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
you had something to add?
Yeah, I just had a question for the board because the 3 retaining walls on the west are super visible from Cabrillo and the bird refuge. And I just wanted to make sure we're okay with the landscape that they're proposing or they've installed to maybe soften those retaining walls. Or if you guys are even have a thought about that.
Well, that's a good point. Are those, yeah.
Well, if I can make a comment, I think based on the palette of plant material, the bougainvillea, the rosemary, the acacia, I think if it's not doing that now, I think those plants will more than sort of mitigate the visual impact by cascading over the walls. I think that was the landscape architect's intent.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Sure. No, I'm comfortable with what's being proposed,
Okay.
or what's there, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Thank
it.
you. Anything else? Okay. Anybody else? Any other discussion? No, then let's take our vote.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, thank you. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we can move on to item number 3. We're still a little bit ahead of schedule. Hopefully we have the applicants.
You said to talk
Yes.
fast.
You guys are doing a good job.
Thank you, Chair Moore. We have the architect here for the next item. The next item is also, Ms. Plummer is also the assigned planner for the next item.
Okay, great. Then let's get to it. This is item number 3. This is 1230 San Andreas Street. Here for final approval. This proposal to demolish 2 existing dwellings, a garage, a shed structure, and removal of various non-native vegetation to allow for construction of a new 3-story multi-unit residential building. Project will be comprised of 7 2-bedroom rental units ranging in size from 856 to 922 square feet, with an average unit size of 904 square feet using the AUD incentive program. The proposed density on the 11,589 square foot lot is 27 dwelling units per acre on a parcel with the general plan land use designation of medium high density, which allows 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre. This project includes 7 individual parking garages totaling 1,562 square feet, a trash enclosure, site utilities, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, relocation of the driveway, and new landscaping and hardscaping throughout. Project was granted a slide 2 waiver by the Architectural Board of Review to allow for a 3-foot interior setback reduction for covered parking lots on lots 55 feet or less. Final approval is requested, and this requires substantial conformance with the plans granted PDA on January 29th of 2021. All right, we have our motion, which was PDA to return and eliminate the hedge material and find other plantings for the front yard, find other opportunities for planting in the courtyard, find other opportunities to protect the windows and privacy of the neighbors to the south, provide an opaque fence rather than a wire fence, restudy the length of the cantilever beams supporting the balconies on the south elevation. Given the width of this lot, the waiver 3-foot setback is acceptable. Materials and colors will be reviewed at the next meeting. And then we made the project compatibility analysis. Okay. Looks like we have Ms. Plummer here again. Do you have something to add?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I don't have too many comments as the project is here for final approval and project design approval was previously granted. But I did want to clarify that we did receive correspondence from Mr. Bob Cunningham related to 2 palm trees that are currently shown on the plans to be removed. And I just wanted to note for the record that those palm trees are not located in the front setback. They are allowed to be removed without approval by Parks and Recreation. And I will be available for any other questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And if we could have our applicant.
Good afternoon.
Screen.
Keith Rivera, architect. And
Hello.
I'll go through the architectural plans, and then if we can have, we'll have Chris Gillian, our landscape architect, address the landscape comments. So if we could go to page 10, please.
Okay.
Site plan. No real changes here, but I did want to address the board's comments last time about looking for additional opportunities for planting along the auto court. And unfortunately, with the parking maneuvers, we studied that again. And there were just no, with the maneuvering areas that are required, there were just no additional spots for planting other than the vine pockets that we had planned for before. So I just wanted to address that. We could go to page 12, please. I'm just going to walk you through some of the detailing. This is some of the general site detailing. So up at the top, the trash enclosure. On the right are the property line fences. There was a comment about last time from the board about making the property line fence at the south property line more opaque, given the neighbors' adjacent windows. So we did that. We have an opaque fence up to 6 feet high, and then we have the wire mesh 2 feet above that, whereas before it was all planned to be wire mesh. So we are addressing the neighbor's privacy with that. Let's see if you could just zoom out on that page, please. Yeah, so just the additional site detailing. Detail 5 is the low metal fence that we have at the back of sidewalk there along San Andreas with a little 6-inch curb, just to kind of create a sense of territorial privacy for the front unit's entrance. I guess next we could go to page 13, please. So this is just the roof plan and the basic tile roof details. 2-piece clay tile roof, pretty standard detailing here. We've got our acoustic data on the upper left there for the condensers on the roof, showing they comply with the acoustic requirements of the city. If we can next go to page 17, please. And Pilar, there was a color board exhibit that was uploaded. Is that available? Okay, great. So I'll just kind of walk you through the colors and materials, kind of starting at the top of the building and working our way down. So again, the R1 is just the standard 2-piece clay tile roof. Our low slope roofs have a terracotta color for the single ply membrane there. That's shown as R2. All the gutters and downspouts would be painted this color P4 here, kind of a bronze color. And then moving down the building, of course, a slightly off-white plaster body for the building. The fabric awnings will be this F1 green color here. Our window sash will also be a green color, this W1 color in the middle of the page. Again, those are aluminum clad wood sections. All the metal work is this P3, basically a black color on the right. On the facade at certain small locations adjacent to some windows, we have some ceramic tile accents. That's this maroon tile color here. All our wood is dark brown stain. The unit decks have a quarry tile of this tan color here. And then the base of the building has this stone tile here at the base. So that's the material there. So that's the colors and materials. We could go back to the elevations. So that just kind of shows how all that plays out. So terracotta roof, white plaster walls, green windows and awnings. Perhaps if you could zoom in on the south elevation there, I can just point out where the accents are of those maroon tiles are at the first floor. Those small windows there, those little tile sections between the windows, that's the maroon color tile. That's about it, I think, for the elevations. If we could go to the next page, the sections, please. Page 18. And if we can zoom in on section 2 at the bottom of the page. I believe board member 6 had a comment about trying to minimize the apparent cantilever of the balcony beams. So we took that to heart and we ended up softening down below underneath the decks and carrying that soffit out to the face of the building, which I believe is grid line 2. If we can just scan up a little bit to see the top of the section there. Grid line E. So rather before they were back at grid line C. So we've softened that down to minimize the apparent cantilever of the balcony beams. That was addressing that comment. Could go to sheet 20, please. And I'm just going to walk you quickly through all the detailing. So this sheet has basically all the cladding detailing. So on the right is the plaster and tile detailing, and on the upper left are the trellis beams at the private balconies, and below that are the details for the quarry tile decking on those balconies. We go to the next sheet, please, 21. Just door and window detailing. So again, these are aluminum clad wood sash. Next sheet, please, 22, is the ironwork detailing. So on the upper right there, detail 2 is our fabric awnings. Below that are the little privacy walls between decks on the second floor. The remainder of the sheet in the middle there, details 5 and 7, are the railings. So the decks have kind of a wider wood-like appearance railing, whereas the upper third floor balcony has a lighter metal railing. And then to the left of that are just the section details that accompany that. If we go to the next sheet, please. So just some additional odds and ends: roof detailing, the equipment screening on the north side of the third floor is just a plaster covered wall, flat glass skylights on the very top of our kind of faux chimney elements. Those are on the right hand side. Conductor head there, detail 9, that occurs on the south facade. And that's really it for the architectural detailing. I can turn it over to Chris now, and he can walk you through the landscape plans, which are, I believe, page 70.
All right, thank you, Keith. It's Chris Gillen, Common Ground Landscape Architecture. Starting here with the hardscape plan. Very little in the way of changes from last time. It's pretty much what you saw. I think we actually added a couple more vine pockets along that southern property line to make that greener, as green as possible. And the driveway courtyard, if you will, is 2 different types of stamped and colored concrete, or actually one is stamped, one is not. Just a very light sort of stone stamp, just to give it the appearance of natural stone. And then I guess, let's see, towards, there's stoops that were sort of relocated at each egress for each unit at the first floor, and just DG paths in between. We sort of alternate along the northern property line between chain link fencing covered in vines and wood fencing where we want the privacy. And that's pretty much it for the hardscape. Fairly straightforward, but I think we got a nice little rhythm happening there to break up the linearity of that parking and driveway zone. So I think we could move on to the next page. Oh, just irrigation plan along with the legend and details and our compliance requirement statement and irrigation notes. Next sheet, please. And to the planting, which again was fairly minimal given we don't have a whole lot of space. I believe the one comment, the first comment as you read it today, I believe it wasn't to remove the hedge. It was just that in one section I had it over 42 inches, which would not be allowed in the front yard setback. So basically the hedge is still there. It's just, you know, at its maximum height of 42 inches adjacent to the front fence, and kind of a couple different palm trees along the northern part of the property, Queens and Kings. And I believe we had a Livistonia out front. That's sort of a nice little rare palm tree, a little different than what you see in the norm. And then towards the back or the east of the property, there is a biologist report. So he basically took care of the creek zone. You'll see that in the sort of light green shaded color on the right side of the page. And then we have a wire fence in between just for, you know, security and just to keep people off of that slope. And we sort of continue with the natives on the other side of that with a little prunus, rhamnus, heteromeles, and then down the bottom right, one oak tree along with some, you know, rhamnus and carex. The vines along the southern boundary, along the southern fence, alternate between the Macfuddiana, the cat's claw vine, and bougainvillea, which would be trained flat on that fence with wire until it gets up to the mesh portion, which it'll then infill. And down towards the back, again, we just added one Lonicera in there for good measure. Let's see, behind, I'm jumping around, but behind the residences where you see the palm symbols along the northern boundary, we have faux grass. They're just tiny little backyards and obviously north side, so we wouldn't get real grass to grow. And we want it to be as usable as possible. So those are fenced and gated. And basically the only reason for the gates is for the gardeners to access along that northern property line. And I think that was it. I think it's the last sheet, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the survey.
Yeah. So that is the landscape for you.
Okay, anything else to add?
No.
All right, then we will open public comment for this item. If you would like to make a comment, you can follow the instructions on screen. Do we have anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, I do not see that any member of the public has logged into the webinar to make a public comment on this item. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence?
Thank you, Christina and Chair Moore. We did receive one letter from Christina Wong. Yeah, from Christina Wong, and it was distributed to the board before this hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we will close public comment and go on to questions from the board.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
So could we go back to the landscape plan, the last plan? Actually, this one here, yes. So two questions. Is there accessibility for maintenance to the riparian zone through that fence?
Sorry, I was muted. Keith, maybe you can help me with this. I think we had at one point talked about adding a gate in there, and I don't remember if that was finalized.
more than likely that would be added on the downhill side, because the upper portion is rather steep, and for maintenance and monitoring access, probably on the lower end would be more functional.
So could you remind us, or me, what is your responsibility for that riparian zone? What is required of you?
Basically, it's replanting it with specific native material, and one of the sheets of the set has reproduced basically the biologist's report. So there's the initial phase of that installation, and then there's a monitoring and maintenance phase that occurs over time by the biologist of those plantings.
Thank you. Another question. You show faux grass in those little patio areas off from the back. What's the ground covering between the patios? It doesn't show anything that I can see. That's the area I'm talking about.
All right. So basically the backyard is the faux grass with a palm coming out the middle. And then we have the stoops. It's really very tiny areas. So the faux grass kind of fills the backyard of each of those.
So there's faux grass along that whole side from the beginning of the lot to the back of the lot?
No, I'm sorry. Then that is within the private patios or
Yes.
backyards. And then in between those, which is right in the middle of the screen right now, would be decomposed granite in between. So where it's, yeah.
That's all my questions.
Okay, who's next? Go ahead.
Can we go back to the detail of the fence along the south property line? The one, I guess it's a combination of wood and wire. Is that correct? I didn't understand how much wood there was and how much wire there was. I think there was a section.
There's 6 feet of wood and 2 feet of wire at the top, wire mesh at the top.
Oh, okay. So you have 6 feet of opaque fence then.
Correct.
Yeah, that's sheet 12.
Okay. Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Chair Moore, Richard.
ahead.
I know this is not the time to bring this up, but just to refresh my memory, you're using the bottom of the creek for one of your yard requirements, the open yard, yet there's no access and a very steep incline. Has that been passed by the building and zoning desk? And how do they allow you to take a required amenity such as that and divorce it entirely and have it accessed or inaccessible? I don't, can you explain that?
Well, it's a bit of a catch-22 because of the biological situation. You're really not allowed to have access into the habitat. So from a zoning standpoint on paper, it contributes to the open yard requirement, and the residents have their own private open space in the way of their upper floor decks to satisfy the additional open yard requirements. So there's really no accessibility requirement to get to that biological habitat.
So when we speak of open yard, it's not a requirement for the use or an amenity for the use of the occupants. It's for a general environmental feature. That's interesting. There is, you know, I don't see how this is when I count up the thickness of the fence and then the vines upon it in this 3-foot sliver between the property line and the back of the garages, I take 3 foot minus the 5-inch fence is 2'7", and then these gates are going to have some kind of jam on them. Is less than 3 feet an appropriate building and safety issue?
Well, in those areas, that's access purely for maintenance, for landscape maintenance and everything. So someone can, building maintenance, so people can access the back of that side of the building. It's not an egress question from a buildings code standpoint. The unit's
Okay.
only required one means of egress, and that's on the south side front door.
Okay. If we could go to, I think, your window detail sheet, 8 point whatever.
Page 21.
Now, these are, they're nice wood clad windows. But there is a space, if we look, for instance, at detail 3, we see that the window is pushed out toward the surface of the exterior, and then there's a spacer that the manufacturer provides between the back of the window and the surface of the interior wall. Can the manufacturer, is there an option for the manufacturer to avoid that spacer and have a longer depth to that metal projection just outside the side of the window?
Understanding your question, yes. Well, these are, this is a very tight project down to literally every inch, and these are 2x4 walls. So if we had the luxury of a 2x6 depth, we could possibly do that, but I don't see that as very feasible with the 2x4 walls. We are using an exterior insulated stucco system, so that does give some extra depth to the stucco surface from the window plane.
So the window manufacturer doesn't have the option of a deeper rim, exterior rim around the window and avoid the spacer that we see here?
Not for this depth of wall. That's kind of the standard section there. So it can go deeper, but it can't really go narrower.
Okay, I will let that go. And then I don't know what you on 8.5 you have several details. Are we on 8.5? We have details 3 and 8 show healthy metal galvanized flashing. What are the extent of the galvanized flashing on this Spanish style architecture? Can you guide us through where those are?
Well, perhaps we could go to the roof plan, which would be sheet 13. There's only some short sections of kind of metal coping per se. And perhaps we could zoom in like around grid line 3 and 4 on the north side. So if you see that call out 7.9, that note there in the middle of the page, that small L section is the only portion of metal coping that we have. So that's,
Oh, really?
you
Okay,
know, and that, you know, obviously reoccurs multiple times on the building, but it's only those small portions.
I see. So those are the only true parapets then.
Correct.
And then the roof edge, that detail 3,
Yeah, so that would be
Yes.
note 7.4 there. So basically there's a large scale, you know, shaped metal gutter.
oh, so there's a gutter in back of that flashing, or in front of that and flashing.
Well, no, that's just it's just the low slope roof there is just draining right to the gutter. There's no parapet or drip edge there.
Can we see detail 12 again?
I'm sorry?
Can we see detail 12, 8.5 again?
So detail 12, that is the edge of those low slope sections.
I get it. And then detail 3 on that same is just a blow up of that area, no?
Yeah, it's, you know, that's basically a generic drip
Right.
detail for the low slope manufacturer.
Enough said. And just final question, I'll hurry it up here. I saw the vine pockets, those Geraldton South property line vine pockets on the landscape. Are you sure you have it on your architectural sheets? I didn't see it. Those are the landscape plan. I want to make sure that these vine pockets are on the architectural.
We
We are
made-
showing the hardscape plan also for the landscape.
Yeah,
So
we can coordinate to make sure that those are called out on the general site plan.
Yes, please do. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I would like to ask another question, if that's all
Go
right.
ahead.
So back to the riparian zone, I thought you had said that there were maintenance requirements and those would be detailed somewhere else. But if there are maintenance requirements, it seems you have to provide access to that space. And so
There would be a gate at the lower edge of that to provide access for maintenance and the observation that's required by the biologists, the monitoring.
great, thank you.
Okay.
Chair Moore, I
I have
have
a
one,
couple. Okay, go ahead.
I just have one question. Do you know, does the applicant know the floor area ratio of this project?
Boy, not off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Okay, it's a good question. We should be asking that more and more these days. My questions relate to the landscape. So as a part of the motion, last time around, the request was to add additional landscaping, especially along the driveway area. And it looks like you came back with more vine pockets. But tell me, why is it that you can't cut out of the southern perimeter of the driveway? You know, if car wheels can't actually reach that area, what is limiting you from providing actual open ground along that edge
Our planning
and
consultant
planted material,
are
sort of a wheel stop kind of scenario?
our planning consultant created a parking exhibit for transportation. I don't know if that was included in our submittal, but basically that whole southern edge is kind of a spaghetti of maneuvering lines. You know, we only have the area of those pockets to really work with, unfortunately. I mean, again, this is an extremely narrow lot. You know, that's why we have the contortions at our garage door entries that we have in configuration, was to satisfy transportation's maneuvering requirements.
Mhm. So similar question on those little triangles at your kind of chamfered areas by the front doors. I mean, you certainly couldn't get a car wheel in that area. Is there a reason
All I
you
can
can't
say is
plant those?
You know, we spent an inordinate amount of time with transportation discussing these parking maneuvers, and had to continually trim back the building to allow for the maneuvering that they would approve. I wish that weren't the case, but that's how we ended up.
Right. I understand that the transportation department also isn't, their priority isn't the aesthetics or the landscape. So I'm just trying to get to the bottom. If you
Yeah,
had
Kevin, I'm trying to,
shown that at some
I'm trying
point.
to use those little triangles for more landscape, and I got shut down. So it was due to transportation. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Mhm. Okay. And then I'm assuming so on the fence, we requested a solid fence. And you've got solid up to 6 feet and then a wire mesh. 8?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
along
Okay.
the south property line there.
And okay, and the reason it has a wire component?
Well, we felt that, you know, having a solid 8-foot fence was just kind of too much enclosure, particularly for the neighbors. You know, adjacent windows, they would be kind of, you know, up against an 8-foot wall. So we felt this allowed some visibility at an upper level, while maintaining privacy down at the lower portion, and, you know, from car headlights and that kind of thing.
Mhm. But it's reliant on the vines to cover that mesh up eventually,
Yes,
and to be maintained.
correct.
Okay. Then if we go back to that roof plan, you had those mechanical kind of wells. What ended up being in there?
So if we could maybe zoom in on one of the low slope sections, say between grid lines 3 and 5, that's kind of a typical. So the note 15.3 are the split system heat pump condensers. So you're, you know, familiar with those. They're basically kind of like a big flat suitcase. They're up against the wall. There are, you know, as you know, various air clearances on the sides and front for them to operate. And so then in front of those little L-shaped walls are those equipment screens that I pointed out in the detailing to screen those from view. And those are evident in the sections if you want to look at sheet 18.
Yes, please. Sorry, I froze up there.
And that would be section 2, the upper floor there. So where that detail bubble 8.4, that is the equipment screen there, which goes just above the top of the condenser units, which are 15.1 behind it.
Okay, can we go to that detail?
Yeah, so that would be 8.4. Not sure what sheet that is. So there it's detail 7 in the middle of the page there. So essentially it's a plaster screen wall with no metal copings. It's just a plaster wrapped cap.
There's a height called out, it says on the building section.
Yeah, we could go back to the previous sheet. So that same section, and
If we could, because the,
so to the left there, you can see top of plate of screen. That's 48 inches above the third floor level.
so your note, it's 15.1, that's the condensing unit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the screen wall, it looks like it has a turn in it beyond,
Yeah,
or what are we seeing
no,
there?
it's like an unequal L in plan. And so that was so, if you're looking at it obliquely there, it just doesn't appear like a flat plane that's kind of flapping in the breeze. It has a return to kind of give it a little mass.
Got it. And then what's to the left of that with the detail of 1 foot 3 inches tall, or a dimension 1 foot 3 inches tall? What is that box there at
That's
the
that
edge?
little coping parapet that we were looking at earlier. That's the height of that there. Correct.
Oh, beyond, that's further back. Okay, got it. Okay, those are my questions. Anybody else? Follow up?
Yes, Chairman Moore.
No? Okay, let's go to comments if we could.
Chairman Moore,
Go ahead.
it appears we have a little
Yes.
bit of time. I wonder
Go
if
ahead.
we could have the list of conditions posted on the screen again, just so that we might briefly look at those, make sure that we reviewed all of them. Thank you.
You mean the motion or the conditions?
No, I have what I want here.
Okay, we can leave it up there though. It's good for everybody to see.
Great, just a couple of minutes.
Okay. Anybody want to start? Go ahead, Mr. Olson. You had something to add?
I do not. I think I'm satisfied. I'm not going to make the motion. I'm ready to go to that.
All right, so. Okay, well, you can make comments if you'd like.
I'll make a comment.
Or if anybody wants to jump in. Great.
Mr. Chair Moore. I think I commend the creativity of the design team to find a solution that takes every inch advantage of this site. I am very concerned, and we've accepted this on general design and given it project approval, design approval prior to this, but it's really extreme and the limits of what I would find acceptable in the way of, maximizing a site, even given the ideas of the housing crisis and so forth. I think it's unfortunate that we can't find, and I think we led ourselves down this path to where, we didn't demand at the beginning that they lop off a unit or find other ways. And the consequences are we have hardly any landscaping, we have hardly any reasonable open ground area for the inhabitants. It's a very San Francisco style lifestyle and project, but the architecture, the details that we're here today to review and approve look fine. And I just don't see how they can get any more landscaping given the road that we've gone down with them. Those are my comments. And it would be very interesting to find out what the floor area ratio of this project is, because I think it's an example of how far an applicant can go physically with the site constraints. He's maximized every site constraints, and commendably, but it'd be very interesting to see where that FAR falls in this example. Those are my comments.
Vice Chair Six, I agree with the majority of your comments. I think it is very unfortunate that we are so constrained here, and I still hesitate to really fully accept that the transportation said no, you can't have 12 inches of landscape strip along the side of the driveway. I think that's probably achievable and usable, at least. And as far as the FAR discussion, this site is an awful lot larger than it will appear from the street. So the FAR number would be thrown off by the large area at the back along the creek side. So
that's correct.
We wouldn't really get a true read on what this really is.
Nope.
Without some other information. So, but on the other hand, it's going to provide additional housing, which is what we've been told we need. So those are my comments. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I share Mr. Six's and your concerns about the overall project. I do have some reservations about the repetitive nature of the design, but as it fulfills its program requirements, that's no more to be said about that. I did want to compliment the designers on the fence and the trash enclosure. I think they did a very careful, detailed, and thoughtful solution to those problems. The landscaping, as you have mentioned so accurately, is a problem for me. And more specifically, these little private yards or gardens at the back, which seem to me to be unable to hold the plant material that's indicated them by a palm. That's not to say that something couldn't be done. Seems to me that these are almost sort of miniature little bonsai gardens that are going to take some more careful attention to prevent them from being just kind of an overgrown mass of planting material. If they're meant to be used I don't see these as particularly useful spaces. It seems to me they're more of viewing gardens and should be designed as such rather than just sticking a piece of plant material in them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Just a follow-up to my comments. In looking back at the history, we gave a waiver to allow the garage to be within 3 feet of the side yard, or 3 feet of the side property line. And I think what's implicit with that waiver is the expectation that the applicant is going to provide something to offset that somewhere else. And generally that's done with additional landscaping or other benefits for the entire project. So I am disappointed in this process in this project in that way. And so that's my last comment there.
Chair Moore,
Yes.
One comment that Mr. Board Member Whelan indicated, and maybe the landscaper or Mr. Black can comment that these are these palms right in the middle of these little backyard 6 foot wide niches in the north property line, and if they're palms, then that would do a great deal, at least if they're ordered very tall and significant, they would do a great deal to soften the architecture to the neighbor. Is that the intent? And to stick obviously sticking a short 3 foot palm in here is going to clobber that space. But if we, whether it's intended or we can demand that we have mature palms planted in these areas, that would go a long way to soften those roofscapes from the neighbor.
Thank you, Board Member 6. This is Chris Gillen, landscape architect. If you notice at the top right under comments for these palm trees, I am requiring a minimum of 6 brown trunk feet and 8 for the queens. So those will be substantial palms to start off. And basically the reason for that was because it's such a limited space, and we're going to want to and need to be able to walk around these palms and have the canopy actually overhead. So we'll be starting off with 6 and 8 brown trunk feet, which means the canopy will then be another, 5, 7 to 10 feet above that. And also, once we get the structure built, I may actually want to push those palms slightly outward towards the fence, just so they're not right up against the building itself. I was worried a little bit about there are gates there, so I wanted to just make sure there was room to walk around it, but we may want to move those a foot or 2 outward away from the building so that the canopy is, can spread its wings.
Okay.
So to speak.
David, does that all,
thank you.
Black, does that all sound reasonable?
Yeah, and I had noticed the minimum brown trunk height on the plant legend, so I wasn't as concerned about that.
Okay, thank you.
I think we'll be okay. Can I make one other comment about landscape? So this is as much an observation as it is a comment, but I'm given the lack of space, that south property line, that fence, the Bougainvillea Barber karst, Mr. Gillian, I think we both know that could be a really large plant. And I'm not sure that, given the amount of space that you actually have, I mean, unless the thing is sheared back against the fence, I think you're going to be running out of room relative to, foliage encroaching onto that driveway. So I noticed you had a Grewey alternate, and but something like that that's probably a little bit tighter to the fence, I think is going to do the project a lot more good than Bougainvillea. Just given what everybody knows about Bougainvillea and how large they can get. So
Right. Okay. Yeah, that would take some shearing for sure. Keep that trained.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Does somebody want to take a crack at a motion here? They are here they're requesting final approval. Certainly appears they have all of the information required for that.
Chair Moore, I'm not going to make the motion, but is your concern about not believing and demanding more push and transportation for pocket fines in the southern elevation, is that a condition the maker of the motion should apply to his, you know, how would you like, I'm a resident with that. I think all of us do. How would you like to have that postured in whoever makes the motion?
I guess I would just request that the applicant provide drawings and documentation of their discussions and reviews with the transportation department to show that they attempted to provide additional landscaping, and that the transportation did review those and found them unacceptable.
And that would be
Chair, if I may.
that would be certified by
Sorry,
consent.
we're going. Yeah, that's fine.
That would be certified by consent.
Yes, that's fine. Did I lose you?
Mr. Chair? Can I make one last comment?
Yes.
You know, I still fail to understand why it is that we can't have, 12 or 18 inches of planting strip along that southern fence line. Just given car overhangs and what have you. I mean, if you had something low, like, let's, for the sake of discussion, let's say it was a row of agapanthus, just something soft and flowering that only reached, a foot or two high. I don't think a case could be made that that's not going to really interfere with vehicles backing up, I would guess. So it just seems like there's an opportunity there that transportation is just not seen, but we should require, I think. That's my only comment there. I think there's enough room for that.
Board member Black, I think that's a perfect segue in for you to make a final, or for you to make a motion.
Well, if you give me your notes, Mr. Six, I would be happy to do that, but well, then I would propose a motion for final approval with conditions, or final approval with the conditions that would come back on consent. And these conditions would include
So, Mr.
Yeah, go ahead.
Black, let's not do a final with conditions to come back. Let's try and do we don't want to, because that puts the onus on the planning department to steer the project back this way. So I would suggest we do a continuance to consent for final approval with the following comments. That would be my.
Okay. I'm going to need some help in terms of some of the other comments and conditions that we've discussed that are important to us.
Okay.
So David, if Chair Moore, if I may help David, that
Thank you.
more articulately that the applicant shall, number one, give graphic evidence from their discussions with planning from Transportation Department that no additional planting can be provided, and that if that additional planting, if possible, would be determined at consent. That I think that sits right, Chair Moore, is that correct? You're cutting out.
I think that's fine. I think, do we want to add? No. Do we want to add anything about the rest of the architecture, materials, etc.? Can't hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh.
David,
Do
you
we want
want
to add anything
Well,
about
I'd like to, I would defer to either Mr. Moore or Mr. Six for comments on the architecture, if you don't mind. Thank you.
All right. So in addition to the motion that, to the item under the motion regarding the traffic evidence, that the board finds that given the constraints of the site, the architecture and site planning are acceptable. And that the colors, materials, and general design is very nice. I think that's, am I forgetting something there more?
Okay. No,
I do think
that's fine.
One more comment.
So
one more comment would be that the board finds this an extremely dense project, and that it is at the limits of acceptability in its density, its mass, bulk, and scale, and its lack of and its minimum landscape.
I would add one, I would like to see.
So we had, go ahead.
I would like to see a maintenance access to the riparian area.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Mr. Black's motion.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Six, did you second this?
Yes.
Oh, could we have Mary read it back?
Yes.
Please.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you, board members. I'll go ahead and read it back. So the motion is to continue indefinitely to consent for final approval with the following comments. Number one, the applicant shall give graphic evidence from their discussions with transportation that no additional planting can be provided. Additional planting, if possible, would be determined at consent. Number two, the board finds that given the constraints of the site, the architecture and site planning are acceptable. Number three, the colors, materials, and general design are very nice. Number four, the board finds that this is an extremely dense project and the limits of acceptability in its density, mass, bulk, and scale, and its minimal landscape. And number 5, provide maintenance access.
Sounds good.
Can we do a 2-week instead of indefinite?
Okay, sorry, hold on. We need the applicant to be muted.
Sorry.
So to the maker of the motion, the last line was a little unclear to me. So provide maintenance access to the, what? To the area adjacent to the creek?
Yeah, the riparian area.
Riparian area. Okay, so
Chair
we
Moore,
could add
Chair
to
Moore,
the provide maintenance access to the riparian area.
Chair Moore, I
Yes.
thought that we understood that maintenance-wise, the access for the city and those in interest to maintaining the creek, those accesses were down along the creek in the lower portion, and that the steepness of this embankment here, it was not possible even if wanted to provide a significant or maintenance access down to that bottom. Is that not correct?
But the applicant said he would put one in.
Yeah. So it's up to him to decide where it goes. He just needs to provide it.
Okay. But I would be concerned that our motion is saying that this access has to be from this upper portion of the site down to the creek rather than from a remote area along the creek.
It just says provide a access gate to the riparian area. It doesn't say where.
Okay, as long as that's understood.
And the applicant can come back and say, well, that's not a part of our application. The city will provide that. So he just needs to, give us some more information about that.
And that could be handled at consent.
I think
Yes.
so.
Okay.
Okay. So is all that acceptable to the maker of the motion and seconder of the motion?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify with the commission. I know it was a motion for an indefinite continuance to consent, but would the commission be open to a 2-week continuance or indefinite?
That's fine. We usually just do indefinite, and then if there's availability on the next agenda, they can get in there. So the next available agenda, I think, is what we could read.
Ms. Plummer, we're not honored yet enough to be called commissioners.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so again, we had our first, and then who was the seconder? That was Vice Chair Six.
Yep.
Okay, and it's time to take our vote, please.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Yes.
And Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to take a 2-minute break if we could. Are we ready to get it going again?
Yes.
Ready.
Ready.
Staff's ready.
Great. Let's do it. All right, we're going to reopen our agenda for May 3rd and move on to item number 4, which is 923 Castillo Street. This proposed project involves construction of 3 two-bedroom condominium units with 7 on-grade parking spaces with an on a vacant 9,000 square foot lot adjacent to Mission Creek. The proposed 3-unit condominium project would be 14.57 dwelling units per acre, which is consistent with the RM and general plan designation of medium-high density residential. The discretionary application is required for this project is a tentative subdivision map for a 1-lot subdivision to create 3 residential condominium units. Planning Commission approved the project on February 13th of last year. Project design and final approval is requested. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis and the infill design guidelines and outdoor lighting design guidelines. And we last reviewed this project on April 8th of 2019. So before we jump in, how many board members were around for this one? Do we have Mr. Six? Mr. Black was not. Anybody else?
How about yourself, Chair Moore?
I did go back. Yeah, I was around for this. So it's been a while. So we had a little bit of a turnover since then. But do we have 4 members that are able to review this project? So myself, Vice Chair Six, Mr. Olson.
I
we
went
needed
back
at
and
least.
watched the video.
Okay.
So
Great. Thank you for
Yeah.
doing that.
So did I.
Okay, great. Mr. Black and then Mr. Whalen.
I studied the submittals. I did not watch the video, and I read the minutes.
Okay. Alrighty, let's quickly look at the motion. The board supports the project. We made the project compatibility analysis. And is there a transformer required? Provide landscape plan for PDA. And study bringing more girth to the support columns, especially in the southeast corner. Okay. All right. Well, if we have the applicant.
Chair Moore, thank you.
Yes.
Since this one has been a while since it's been to the board, we do have the case planner for this project, Ms. Broadison, and I'd like to introduce her so that she can give a brief overview of the project.
Okay, great.
Ms. Broadison, I've sent you a few unmute requests. We do have the applicant here. If we get Ms. Broadison back, then at that time she'll be here so that she can answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. there we go. Welcome back. If you could introduce yourself and take us through this.
My name is Richard Redmond, and I'm the architect for this project.
I'm Amy Blakemore, the landscape architect.
Amy.
Richard.
To start, I'm not real familiar with the process. So do I have control of the screen, or is this done through the staff?
Unfortunately, you don't have control. You have to direct the staff to point at things, enlarge things, go to certain pages. So
Can I get rid of this control panel on the side?
don't believe so. Sorry.
Mr. Redmond, you'll want to keep that control panel up. That way you can put yourself on mute and share your web camera on that. You can just give verbal cues to Mr. Bolton, and he'll, for which PDF page number you'd like to go to, and he'll go to that page.
It kind of obscures part of the drawing, though. That's why I was curious. Okay, let's start with the let me see what sheet I want to go to. Can we go to the next sheet? This is an existing site along Castillo Street, and it's been a problematic site because of the nature of the creek and its relationship. So we basically, where you see that dark line running through the site is basically the potential high water mark. So everything, the way we've designed it, everything below that point is basically open with some breakaway walls between those columns. And then the Castillo side actually forms a wall, basically where storage and access to the units are. And basically each unit has an elevator going from the ground floor up to their unit. Only goes one floor. Next sheet. The plan is relatively simple. We're entering a kitchen, dining, living room situation on the first floor. Or I will call it the main floor that's just off of Castillo, and the whole deck is raised up to be above the high water mark or high water line. The freeway is to the left, and we're basically sealing everything from a certain point, approximately halfway through the units to the left, as being inoperable windows and unable to do decks and stuff on that side of the building because of the relationship to the freeway. And there's air quality issues and noise involved. Can we go to the next sheet? This is the main floor again. Probably go on to the next sheet. Same thing. Again, this is the main floor. Driveway access is to the south. The upper floor, again, simple. We have a bedroom in the front, bedroom in the rear, and all the utilities in between along the stairways. It's typical in all three units. We've tried to step the back to get some sort of relief on that, on the massing. And we've actually stepped the second floor back from the first floor to provide some decks on the Castillo side. And then again, basically all our front outdoor space is on the Castillo side of the building. Next sheet. This shows basically the roof. We're providing some skylights above the stair area. All roofs are flat. All utilities for all furnaces and air conditioning units are going to be on the upper floor. Again, halfway through the building is where our setback, the 250-foot setback is from 101. Therefore, all the units are going to be in the small space between, say, line 4, I believe that's line 4, in the back of the tile roof area. Next.
They were showing the city council,
And next sheet.
but now it's on.
Front elevation, we have the second floor setback from the first floor. We've recessed the entries down below so that we get some staggering of the entries into these units. The trash areas are behind those doors that are shown to the right and left on this elevation. Upper floor decks, tile roofs. I can go into materials later. Railings and everything are shown on the details. There is a portion of the building below the arches that actually sits out flush with the front side of the balconies. And this forms kind of a recess from which these other, actually 2 units accesses through those archways. Let's go down and look at the, this is the elevation facing the driveway. Again, we've tried to step the back so that we get some relief from the massing. And the front actually steps, and then we've put, since this is the south side, we've put awnings on some of these windows. Next. That's the rear elevation. Again, it steps back and the roofs actually get smaller as you recede. The back elevations do have balconies shown, but they're not accessible. Oh, the next elevation is the north elevation, and it actually steps back on a couple of planes with a lower roof with tile on it. And then a step back actually with stucco, and then a wraparound deck on the one unit. And we have divided lights in all the windows. We're actually going to do a vinyl window with integral color in a brown. Next sheet. A detail of the stucco chimney caps. Next. Got a couple of sections through the building showing where the tile roofs are and where our flat roofs are in between. Again, the skylights over the top of the stairwell. Next. The railing details are shown on the top left. The one railing at the rear shows it's only out about 6 inches. The railings on the front of the building are much larger, and we alternate between our pickets We alternate between a twisted picket and a straight picket with some knuckles. And basically our window detail, we do set back the vinyl window on all the elevations. The east elevation down at the bottom right of the sheet shows a 2x8 wall where we're using an increased setback and doing the same for the doors down below, for the entry doors. Let's back out again. Eave details, we're using an S-tile concrete. We're doing a wood detail above the stucco and extended rafter tails with wood in between. We do a detail on all the parapets. We do have a cap over the top of that, galvanized iron, so to be painted. Next. Exterior lighting, we're doing basically limiting our lighting to step lights, some lighting on by the units themselves. Was shown basically a wall-mounted fixture of that style, step lights down below, and then down in the garage area, we're doing ceiling-mounted lighting. Downlights, for sure, so. Again, could I see the left side of that sheet? Yeah, that shows a step light, but again, the control panel really is hiding that side of the sheet. Next. Again, lighting at the lower level, downlights. And next sheet. I think I'll let Amy address this.
Thanks, Richard. Is it still loading on the screen? Looks like the plant list isn't quite all there. As Richard mentioned, we're within the entire property is basically considered a restoration area for Mission Creek. So we're fairly restricted in terms of the types of plants we can specify. In addition, we've got the retention basin that we need to accommodate within the rear yard. So we've accommodated that with some plantings that can take periodic wet roots, some juncus and Lamus condensatus. We are required to do a bit of mitigation planting as well. So we're using the mitigation planting of Quercus arborifolium and Platanus species to sort of frame the rear of the property and kind of give some buffering for the freeway noise and also the neighboring properties as well. There's some drifts of grasses and some foundation plantings of Carpentaria and sages in the back with some Sambucus as well. At the west side of the property, we've got a prunus hedge just to try to give a little bit of buffer. There's a driveway directly adjacent to that section of the building. So just to try to green that up and give a little buffer between the properties, especially on the higher traffic area like the staircase. And then at the east side of the property between the driveway and the building, it's actually a cantilevered situation. So we're in quite a bit of shade there with some eastern exposure, so morning light. So we've got some ribes and Carpentarias there too to try to green that up, but also be tolerant of the conditions there and also being all native plant materials. At the Street frontage, again, more natives. We are proposing a jacaranda, that's the street tree selection for this street. And a low hedge of lemonade berry, which I'm envisioning could be maintained similar to what's up at the Santa Barbara Botanic Gardens. Trying to find something that would be robust enough to take the traffic on either side there and still be green and survive. And then again, just some foundation plantings of Carpinteria californica and some Lysandra and Hespero yucca. I think that kind of go, and the Rosa californica lines the driveway on the east side as well. The expectation would be that that would be getting a nice cut back every year so that you get some nice fresh growth and that it could be in and really hold that soil. So we're dealing with a little bit of erosion control issues as well. So. And I think that covers it.
I would like to mention basically some of the materials we're using. And unfortunately, I did not submit a color board. I have a color board on my computer. I thought maybe if I could share my screen, it would be useful. Is that possible?
Sorry, unfortunately, we're not able to share screens that would be ideal, but it's unfortunately not possible at this point. If you have something printed, you could hold it up or something physical.
I could try to do that.
Okay. Well, why don't you try and do that, and then while we're doing our questions, maybe we can. Okay. You can get that done. So, if that's everything you wanted to run through, we can move on to public comments. If there's anybody in the public that would like to address the board regarding this project, you can follow the instructions on screen. Anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, I do not see anybody has logged into the webinar to make a comment on this item. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence for this item?
Thank you, Christina. Chair Moore, we have not received written correspondence for this item. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so go ahead.
Pardon me. We also have Ms. Brodesson, who has re-attended the webinar to give an introduction to this project. Ms. Brodesson, are you able to unmute yourself? Thank you. Ms. Brodesson, I see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. I think we're going to have to try again for Ms. Brodesson.
Why don't we run through the color board that the applicant is holding up while we wait for that.
This item is the concrete tile. It's a Duralite España terracotta flashed, and it's a lightweight concrete tile. The stucco we're going to use is actually a smooth coat La Habra interval color in crystal white. The Milgard series is in classic brown with an exterior grid. I think you can see that grid on here.
I can see that now.
The wood trim and rafters are going to be this Olympic chocolate color. The awnings are going to be the Sunbrella, which is a hemlock tweed. It's kind of a muted green. The front doors are going to be stained, and they'll either be stained this chocolate brown or be painted in this Sherwin-Williams Lagoon color. The gutters and downspouts are going to be the Tuscany brown, actually to match the window color, which is like this one. Front doors are to be this vertical cut with a border. And again, they'll either be stained or painted that color. And then the brown on here actually represents the downstairs doors. I didn't want them to be quite as dark as the other colors, as the window.
Okay.
The gutters and downspouts will be painted similar to the windows.
Great, thank you for that. All right, unless we have Ms. Broderson back or with us, we should move on to questions from the board. We can get the board members up here. Who would like to start with questions?
So Chair Moore, Richard here.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond, I noticed that you're doing all your parapet walls in GI flashing, and usually we have applicants wrap their parapets in plaster with double membranes and so forth underneath. Is that objectionable to you, and why are you using flashing here? Well, I know, but
it's not objectionable.
Okay, thank you.
I've done it in the past.
All right. Just out of curiosity, you say that the windows, all of the windows in the back end of the building are sealed. Does that mean they're not openable?
That's correct.
Then how do you get your escape window criteria out of there, just out of curiosity?
That's a good question. I guess they have to be openable, although the entire building has to be air conditioned. Let me put it this way. It's true, I do need escape windows. And so those windows do have to be operable only in an emergency. I understand that the city is very concerned about the air that's coming from the freeway.
Okay, enough said. Can Mr. Bolton bring up the comments from last time? Buried in the compatibility analysis, it's on A2 1I, study minimizing the height of the first finished floor structure relative to the base flood elevation. This is in respect to mass, bulk, and scale. Was an attempt made to do that, and why I think we're seeing the same dimensional elevations now? Was there attempt, and why didn't it change or make progress?
We did, and we're basically 2 feet above, our finished floor is 2 feet above the base flood elevation. And all our utilities and everything has to go within that space. So that's why we actually have a platform coming up to the house. It's quite high.
So there's no tolerances there. There's no,
Not with 2 feet available.
okay. I noticed, down and one of our, criteria is, lighting design. I noticed, and I did a little research on the garage, you have 15 lights, and I see the equivalent is for each of those lights is 100-watt incandescent bulb. That's 1,500-watt bulbs down there. Is that seems like a lot of lighting? Was that ever checked, reviewed, or considered for obnoxious lighting to the neighbors?
No, it was not.
Okay, thanks. My last item is I didn't see, and it would be good to get on one of the side elevations. I didn't see any details on a weep screed. It seems to me that there's a lot of, slope and possibly exposed block or concrete sawtooth issues here when the plaster stops. Do you have a detail or thoughts on how you're going to create a nice termination of the stucco at grade throughout the building?
To be determined.
Okay. I think that those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Who is next? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, go ahead, Mr. Whalen.
Sure, a couple of questions. I'm a little confused on the path of travel from the street. It appears that one can get to the garage and to the front doors from the street by looking at different drawings. Say on this one, it looks like there's a steps up to the house.
Correct.
And then you're also able, if you go to the garage plan, I'm just not understanding how these two circulation systems intersect, That's not the drawing. I guess I was mistaken. No, that's the roof plan.
Well, this basically shows, I'll go back.
Can you show the garage plan?
Yeah, I have to go
No,
back.
not that plan. There was another garage plan.
Yes. That's it.
That's it. Well, I must have been looking at something else. I apologize for the confusion.
It was the
Let's see.
landscape plan. I think it was the landscape plan that showed the garage.
Thank you.
Well, this shows the garage level, and it shows access from the street on the south side. And then on the
Yes.
north side, there's stairs that come up from the garage level up to the upper level.
I was confused by some other drawing. I apologize, but moving on, if you could go to the first floor plan. And a blow up of it would be the southeast corner, just outside that kitchen. There appear to be a row of boxes. Are those gas meters?
They are. Those are electric meters, actually.
All right. They did not
Yeah.
show up. Yes, they did not show up on the elevations. So what is inside the the storage right adjacent to that with the double doors?
That's the trash area. That's the trash and recycling.
So each unit has 2 containers. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And the
Uh,
gas
and-
meters are shown then just above the that doorway adjacent to the elevator. Those 2 little boxes.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
Let's see, a couple other questions. You didn't mention the colors of the window frames themselves, or perhaps I missed it.
They were the brown,
The dark
and then we're
brown.
stucking straight up to the frame.
All right. And then if you could go to the landscape plan, please. And zoom in. It appears that there's an extensive planting area underneath the building right there in the southeast corner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
All right. Those are my only questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Question.
I'm sorry, Chair Moore. This is the drawing that seems to imply there's a route from the street into the garage. Mr. Olson was right.
I think the confusion, yeah, I have a cut line through there just to try to get all the information on one sheet so that you can see it continuously as you would be walking through the site. You see the
So-
cut line there. That's as
The
you
dotted
enter the,
line,
correct.
is that the vertical dotted line you're referring to?
Yes.
All right, that would explain my confusion. Thank you.
Okay, my question for you is on the, I guess the east elevation. You can go to
That's
that.
the front elevation.
view. West then, sorry. So are the openings into the garage, is that the level or the expected flood height?
Actually, the base flood elevation is basically to the bottom of that, or bottom of the stucco above those columns.
Okay, so there's a reason they're kind of up there so high. You can't shoot that down.
That's correct.
At all.
Yeah, our concern was, in fact, we're actually doing a breakaway wall for the ones running perpendicular to the creek. So that any water that enters in the area can actually exit out of that area.
Right. Okay, well, that was my question. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Black,
Great.
question.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Since you're here for final, is there an irrigation plan associated with this project?
Yes, there is.
Okay, my primary concern with irrigation is we always are interested in where the backflow preventer is and whether it's going to be properly screened, just as an aesthetic issue. Is it?
We've got those on the northwest corner, and we can get them screened by that hedge that's going to be installed along that property line.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
And Mr. Olson, go ahead.
Yes. If you would stay on this sheet, the description says there are 7 parking spaces, and I can't find the 7th one. I can see 6. So where is the 7th parking place?
The 7th parking place is at the bottom of the driveway.
Right there.
Correct.
Okay, I thought that was a turnaround, but maybe it's not necessary. Because of the width of the garage.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
That's all my
Okay, is
questions.
that everyone's questions? Great. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Just quickly, did we talk about the transformer for the elevator?
No.
Do you have it located, Mr. Edmond?
I don't believe we need a transformer for these elevators. They're pneumatic.
Okay.
They cannot. We have to be very careful on what we have electrically going down below that base flood elevation.
Sure. That was it.
Okay, I think that the gist of that question was hopefully you worked with your consultants to understand if the project requires a transformer at all. So it doesn't come back as a surprise at the end. Okay. All right, so let's go to comments, please. We could have the applicants turn their web cameras off and mute themselves. Okay, so they're here for project design, and final approval is also requested or possible. So who would like to start? I mean, from my perspective, I think it's an attractive project. It's, as we said before, the mass spoken scale seems in keeping with the buildings across the street and the neighborhood in general. I think my only concerns are the roof tile selected as an S tile. Perhaps they could look at providing a real barrel tile at all the edges and visible locations, and maybe the field tile is an S tile if it's a budget issue. But otherwise, I think it's a nice project. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I agree with those. If I may, I agree with those comments. And I think it's a creative solution due to the extremely difficult constraints of this site. And I concur that the mass spoken scale is appropriate and a nice design. And I have a minor, excuse me, but minor comments. I think that, I think that there could be just a little serendipity molding over the front door to the far left-hand unit instead of just the door flat in the plaster. As again, I said, I would look at the brightness of the garage lighting. I would eliminate the GI flashings on the copings. Again, the S tile is an issue. And I would also hope that the one with the electric meters being remotely read, that there could be a decorative enclosure on those meters. And also that the vinyl windows are acceptable, as the architect has made great efforts to and provided handsome recesses of the window faces, door and window faces from the surface of plaster. Those are my comments.
Great. Anybody else? Mr. Olson, go ahead.
I agree that for the most part, it's acceptable and inventive and even creative use of this land. I have a little problem with the arches in front, and I would prefer to see those refined in a more traditional Santa Barbara arch. That's all my comments.
Okay, Mr. Whalen?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. I'm in agreement with the other board members as to mass bulk and scale and the use of barrel tiles. I think that could add a lot to the character of the building. As for the lighting in the garage, perhaps the design can consider a downlight or a downlight can to minimize that exposure rather than some exposed fixture, and also the location of those fixtures should be more in alignment with the columns and the pedestrian circulation rather than in the center of the stalls. I think that would provide for much better illumination and a controlled illumination. Two other small landscaping comments that I would appreciate Mr. Black's reaction to. On the west elevation, at the southwest corner of the building, there's a large vertical panel which looks like a shear panel. I suggest some more vertical planting, a small tree in that area. And then moreover, this hidden garden, if you will, the garage garden, I have some misgivings that that is not going to receive the light and air that plantings generally need, although I will defer to Mr. Black's knowledge on what those specific plantings are and what their prognosis for success might be. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay, Mr. Black, any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I agree with the comment about the like a small tree at that one location, and then I'm comfortable with there are many more shade tolerant native plants that are available, and I think the designer has made use of those here. So, and she mentioned it in her comments as well. So I'm comfortable with that. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, it's time for a motion. Vice Chair 6, I would make a motion for project design approval to return to the consent calendar with the comments that you listed. Would you be?
Yes, I would
amenable?
read it.
Would you be amenable to seconding my motion and reiterating those comments?
I'll second.
Seconded by Vice Chair 6.
Yes, and to add to the so Chair Moore, this would be final on consent then? You PDA
Yes,
now?
return to PDA
Okay.
now and return for final on consent.
And that was in your motion. So my added items of the motion would be as follows: that all the galvanized iron flashing at all parapet walls will be eliminated, and all parapet walls and horizontal top plaster surfaces to be plaster with the appropriate waterproofing beneath. That the garage lighting will be restudied by the electrical engineer to determine the not minimum but appropriate lighting levels to verify the appropriate lighting levels on the garage, in the garage, and perhaps a better spacing to help reduce those lighting levels by making judicial positioning of the lights where needed. The applicant shall consent provide a weep screed detail, and it's suggested that he look to the weep screed detail that breaks the plaster and allows plaster to be sent down below grade. That the electric meters be enclosed in some decorative enclosure, perhaps like to mimic the doors or trash doors, that the S-tile that's recommended either go to the full consistently throughout full two-piece barrel tile, or come to consent with a reason why it cannot be done. And if it cannot be done structurally or for other reasons, that the applicant shall use full barrel tile at eaves and rakes. And do we use it at the ridge also, Kevin?
And the ridge, yes.
Yes, and do we do, we don't need to do the random uplifts midfield, no? That's kind of hokey. Okay, and then, what else did I miss?
The door surround on the south unit.
Oh, and then on the front door to the southernmost unit, some kind of molding to at least indicate some kind of minimal weather protection. I think that's it.
Would you consider some language about the arches?
Board Member Olson, I think I don't have a problem with it. We could take a straw vote if you feel strongly about it.
It doesn't sound like anybody else does, so it's all right to let it go.
Okay.
Yeah, it appears they're kind of fighting for inches on the headroom there.
Yeah.
So it'd be difficult, I think, to other than square them off to make them true arches.
And I don't think squaring them off would generate the charm that this thing has.
Well, I just think maybe the spring line could be adjusted, but I don't have to have my way on this.
Well, I'm glad.
The architect's probably even more glad than you are.
I think, oh, we need to make a PDA. I think.
We need to make the findings.
Yeah, I think you're the maker, so you have to go through those.
Okay. Okay, so we will make the project compatibility analysis. So number one, yes, the project, as far as we are aware, fully complies with the city charter and municipal code. It is consistent with the design guidelines. Number two, it is compatible with the architectural character of the city and neighborhood as it is in the Santa Barbara style and is similar to structures in the neighborhood. Number three, it is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, height, and scale as it is similar to other projects already present in the neighborhood. Number four, as far as we're aware, it is not adjacent to any landmarks or historic resources. Number 5, it does not impact any public views of the oceans or mountains. Number 6, it has generous open space and restorative landscaping for the Mission Creek area, and as well has a nice buffer of landscape at the sidewalk. Okay. Is there anything else we want to add to this motion? Are we ready to move on? I guess we can take our vote now.
All right, we'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whitland.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And as always, there is a 10-day appeal process that is displayed here on the screen. Okay, so that will conclude our agenda for today. So we can close our meeting for May 3rd. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.